Alrighty, so we are back in City Skylines 2 yet again for what's going to be episode 2 of our efforts to turn this empty map into the burgeoning city of Providence. So we started off creating the foundation for an entry into the city. We created a little bit of a secondary grid, which will be a little bit kind of misaligned with the main part of the grid. And I think we're going to create another kind of direction for future grids over here. Because what I wanted to do was to just break it up a little bit and create that illusion of randomness. And that's kind of the idea here. Just disorderliness that will be the fundamental for a unique looking city, something that's not necessarily exactly planned out, something that feels like it just sort of came into being as a result of all of those conflicting interests and different agendas that people would have when a city is being made. Because real cities are not made by just one person who started off with a grass field and decided, oh, well, you know, I think I'll build a city. You know, started usually by a lot of competing interests, which all work together to eventually become the framework for a modern city. And many times the reason why you have these weird situations where grids are not lining up perfectly in a city is because different people planned different parts of the city's development. And that becomes apparent eventually because maybe you had the part of the city that was designed initially at the time of founding. Like, for example, we could imagine in this city, like maybe that square grid right there is the initial footprint of what the city was. And then it expanded and someone else came up with a idea of how they wanted to plan out the grid. Maybe, you know, if it was further back in time, the grid sizes would have been smaller because it was tailored to a time when people would have probably traveled around in horse carts and on foot and things, not like they do today in cars and vehicles that need big, wide streets. So for part of our town, we're just going to have these alleyways, which are creating a really tight, small grid. And that's going to help us give the illusion of something like an old town kind of a feel. And I think what we're going to do while we're at it is to create a pedestrian street that runs somewhere like there. As a matter of fact, we can let the pedestrian street start right about there. And it's not going to follow the perfect grid. We'll have a little bit of an angle there. And we can actually let it go all the way down to this waterfront street, which will be pretty cool because it'll allow us to create the foundation of what will eventually be a fairly walkable city. That area there, we'll leave it open. It could be something like a park. I don't know if I want to go all the way down. I don't think so. I think for this area, closer to the waterfront, we're going to stick to the more modern, larger grid style. Because we're going to need a place to build our modern downtown area. That'll work as kind of like a sort of a boundary road. Now, I feel like we're going to probably want an overpass, which will allow people to go over this main road. And for that purpose, since we did build our second highway ramp, probably the best bet is just to allow this surface street to become a local overpass. And that'll allow our local traffic to go over the main road into town. And we won't have any congestion problems here. But what we could do is create a off-ramp over here. All right, there we have it. So that's going to help us a lot with local traffic. Now we can finish building out our narrow grid of alley streets. And we'll avoid making it an absolutely perfect grid, because usually cities, even if they have a disciplined grid in certain areas, it's not a completely it's not a grid that's not interrupted. You know, like there's going to be some different shaped blocks. There's going to be some things that just don't quite line up. Some short blocks, some long blocks. And then for our surface streets around the edge, we kind of want to avoid having too many streets that are connecting and making intersections. Like, I'll delete that one. We just don't want too much congestion. So that should be a pretty solid mix there. Then we'll have a few more exits there so that traffic can come from that main road to feed into that neighborhood there. But I don't want to have too much congestion on this main avenue, so we're safeguarding it by making sure we have mostly one-way streets there, which will frustrate the people stuck in the neighborhood, but it'll also help prevent excessive traffic problems. And folks who want to get on the freeway, they can go up here and probably get on there, so. So there we've given our people a little bit more options for getting on the freeway if they do want to leave town. Maybe not perfect, but should be pretty functional. Might have a little bit of problems here with people having to make a quick merge if they want to get across, but you know what? There are roads like that in real life, so don't be too worried about that for now. And I think it looks pretty elegant. Looks nice. I like it. That gives us a pretty solid grid there. We're going to want to do something down here. I think we're just going to probably expand more of the grid, kind of like we did before, like that. Again, it kind of creates a little bit more of that sense of a little bit of a chaotic mix of roads that go in different directions and don't feel like they really fit together perfectly, which is kind of the look we're going for. We want it to feel like kind of like a old town of sorts. A place that's been around for a while and not perfect. It's the kind of place where people would want to go visit because it's cool, but it's not necessarily the best place to drive. Like maybe it would be a better place to walk than to drive. Then out here, we'll go ahead and plan to expand our industrial areas a little bit. I think that kind of sets us up for a lot of growth, and it certainly doesn't look like a cookie cutter grid. Like we have a grid going that way, we have a grid going north south, we have another grid that's kind of also similarly angled but not quite the same angle. And we wanted to, what we could even do is maybe create another new angle, something like that, I'm thinking. And that's really going to throw everything for a loop. We'll extend this one-way road. It's actually a two-way avenue, basically. It's just two one-way streets that are going parallel to each other in opposite directions. That gives us an opportunity to connect the new grid direction. I can imagine driving in this city and thinking it would be really infuriating to try to figure out where you're supposed to be going. Because it just doesn't really make any sense, you know? I'm thinking I'm going to leave some of these gaps open, because having extra space will give us room for some of the bigger assets like schools and hospitals and stuff like that. I kind of wanted to maybe make a road go around this cemetery. I don't know. I feel like that cemetery there is a little bit kind of in the way if I wanted to have a uninterrupted waterfront street. So maybe what I'll do is I will delete this curving road, and then we'll actually allow it to go closer to the water. And that's going to allow us to make use of the quay road mechanic. All right. Yeah, that actually looks better. I kind of like that. Up here, we're filling in something kind of like a frontage road here. Mostly, I'm just trying to create this street for practical reasons, because we're going to need space for our industry to develop, so I think that's going to be what that area near the landfill and the freeway will be for. This isn't really so much about like an old town kind of a deal. It's more like a modern industrial area vibe is what we're going for here. Here what we're doing is we're widening that overpass because I anticipate we're going to have a lot of industrial traffic that is trying to go up here, over that bridge, and then turning to get out of town. And now we have a fair number of small grids, big grids, different angled grids. And that's going to help us to kind of have a good, interesting beginning to the city. So it doesn't all branch out in the same direction. So with that out of the way, let's see, what can we do to make our city better? We've got a positive cash flow, but we don't have any education department. So thinking we want to start off with this elementary school. It's a brick elementary school, very historic looking, and I can see that being part of, part of an old town. Like, we don't want to start off with something super modern. We want to start off with something that looks like it probably began around back when the city started. And that fits in well. So we at least have somewhere for our residents to go to school. And we'll put in some more French row housing, some more of these Mediterranean blocks. And facing the waterfront here, I think we'll do this low density waterfront commercial and see what that looks like. I do like how that road is lower than the rest of the surface streets, so it does give that vibe of being, close to the water. You go down there, get your cup of coffee, walk by the riverfront. It'll be a pretty nice experience. Then over here, I think we will take a look at this. What is it? I think this is the Netherlands low density gambrel roof housing and gable roof housing. Let's see what those look like. I've never seen those before. Netherlands row housing, we'll do a little bit of that. And some of the UK detached housing as well. I'm just kind of mixing styles up here. Right now, it looks like we have a lot of demand for high density housing. So we're going to go for the low rent housing. And we're going to put it down over here. Thinking we'll also do Eastern European low rent housing. We'll put some low rent housing zones right along that avenue there. I'm thinking what I want to do for these blocks is to create a sort of a pedestrian promenade kind of a deal. That creates a little bit more of a sense of division and separation between neighborhoods. And it'll just be nice for pedestrians to be able to go up and down through there. Now, I wonder if we can do bike lanes here. So we can do bike lanes on regular streets, but looks like on pedestrian streets you can't do a bike lane. I don't know if bicycles will automatically use the pedestrian roads or not. Guess we'll find out. And we need more industry. So let's take a look at that. Now we have specialized industry. So let's see what we have here. Inland fish farming, forestry, coal mining. I was looking for the new industrial buildings that are part of the expansion. So these are the original ones. All right, here we go. So, industrial signature buildings. Like if we wanted to do a cereal mill, we have to produce grain. So it all starts with some sort of farming. The question is, what kind of local production do we have ability to do here? In the squares we currently own, looks like we could do some grain farming up there. So that's certainly a possibility. And if we do grain farming up here, then we can use that as a segue into building our railroad depot and kind of expanding over there to create a neighborhood around the railroad. But I think we're not going to worry too much about that yet, because right now I want to finish growing out the parts of town that I've already kind of planned for. So we're gonna put more generic industry around the garbage dump. I do wish that there was more generic industry options. It seems like we have so many different things to choose from when it comes to residential, commercial, office zones, but then when you get to industry, you kind of just have one type of industrial zone. And hopefully we get more in the future. Not that it's terrible, like what we do have looks pretty good, but I think when you look at real life industry, to me, what I see as a major distinction in real life in industrial areas is you have something that's kind of like industrial commercial. it's kind of sort of like what you would think of as industrial, but really it's more like just businesses, like a auto glass repair place, or maybe it's a auto shop or something like that. You know, they're not really manufacturing anything, but it's not like a shopping district either. Then you have the warehouse areas where they're logistics hubs for transportation. They're not making things. So I think it would be cool to kind of have different types of industry that are along those lines, like industrial services, industrial warehousing, and then industrial manufacturing. And maybe a fourth type of industry could be high-tech industry, you know, like a microchip plant, or you know, those types of industries that start to blend the lines between industry and office. But what do I know? I'm just kind of talking out loud. One nice thing is we have all of those new assets that are going to be created by passionate people that are of a mind to create cool, user-made content. And so we've already got somebody who just today made a McDonald's and some other things that are going to be custom buildings we can start putting in our games if we want to. So it's going to be pretty cool to see all of the stuff that can potentially become part of Skylines builds in the future. So looking forward to all of that stuff. So I was wondering if we needed another police station, but I think we're all right. Now, what do we got here? What is going on? Not enough customers for the Riverside Grill. So hopefully that goes away whenever we have more residents. Now, it looks like we have some mixed housing too, and that's the housing where people live above and there's retail shops below. As also one of those things that's very cool to see in City Skylines 2 that didn't exist in other iterations of the genre. Mixed housing, where people live and also there are shops. But what we seem to need the most is more low-density housing. Now let's see what we have here. There's the Netherlands housing. I wish when you click on it, it would tell you. Like, it has a little icon there that says, oh wait, no it does. Look at that. That's new, actually. User-created content. So see, it says what kind of a zone it is. It's like that's from the Japan pack. And up here you can see that's Netherlands pack. So that's actually really cool, because last time I played the game, you didn't have any of this there. So if you wanted to click on a building and say, oh, I like that, what zone type is it? You couldn't. Like, it would show a little icon, but it's so small you can't really see it very well. So that's really cool. But I like these. I like these Netherlands houses. Like, they're kind of, you know, it feels very urban, but it doesn't really feel high density, and that's pretty cool. So I think we're gonna do more of that. We have a little bit more demand for office, so this will put our office spaces right there. Now these are not old-fashioned looking offices at all. So I would imagine as time goes on, we will wind up demolishing some things here in this area to make way for, you know, more of like the downtown area, I would imagine. Like this area will get consumed by bigger buildings and stuff like that eventually. Or even we could even do park space in some of it. Meanwhile, our income's growing, so this is on a normal difficulty, so it's not proving to be particularly hard. Like, yeah, there's a simulation there, but it's not like normal difficulty is outrageously difficult. What was really hard is when the game launched with this really easy difficulty, like what is currently easy difficulty. Then they added the harder mode, but there was a problem for builds that already had been created using the easier difficulty settings. It broke saves, made it more difficult for players with existing big cities, and then like you'd load your save, which was fine before the patch, and after the patch it would be like prohibitively difficult to maintain because you had tile upkeep costs and things like that. So they made the whole, you can choose your difficulty, but if you start off on normal difficulty, it's not really that bad. If you begin, work your way up. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning is just that there's so many improvements to the game as a whole between now and when it launched. Like, it's night and day. It's not a perfect game. It's got its issues, but all things considered, if you're running a top-of-the-line system and you're willing to overlook some of the imperfections because nothing in life is perfect, then Cities Skylines is now a pretty solid game to play. It's pretty beautiful, it's pretty amazing, and there's a lot that you can do with the game. And I do firmly believe now that we have the asset creator and things like that, we're going to see a lot of incredible stuff in Cities Skylines 2. And I think it's going to be that moment when the game kind of finds its stride and goes from being the disappointing sequel to Cities Skylines 1 to the actual true successor of Skylines 1, where people stop playing Skylines 1 and they switch over to the new game because it's actually truly better, not just in some ways, but in most ways. Certainly for a game where you spend a lot of your time building roads, Cities Skylines 2 does a really good job of road management. And there we are, our second water tower. The elephant in the room continues to be optimization, because at some point you probably will run into a slowdown where the game doesn't run as fast as you wish it would. Just because, like, there's no upper boundary on how complicated a simulation can become. So, at some point, the game will start to slow down. But that's all right. I think we're going to be able to build a very large and beautiful city before we ever really encounter any major problems with slowdowns. what happens is you don't get a frame drop. What you get is a situation where fast speed doesn't seem very fast anymore, and you know, like it's on 3x, but it's really only going at 0.75 simulation speed. But with some of that, I think you also have to say, well, you know, you make do with what you have, right? Like, if the game has limitations, then do we spend our time being really, really angry about the limitations of the game, or do we just, you know, play within the limitations of the game? Like, if it's the best in the genre, then maybe, you know, the best way to go about approaching the experience is just to say, well, then we'll just make the best of it. And, you know, I have my favorite build going in CS1. I don't really intend to abandon it. I'll probably go back to it. That's actually one reason why I made a point that this build I'm doing here has to be different than the one I'm working on in CS1. So that's why the commitment here has to be 100% unique. Something I'm doing, you know, from my own imagination. Not any having Google Maps open on the second screen and kind of copying, you know, some real world city. Like I was saying, this build's, you know, pulling a tiny bit of inspiration from New Orleans, or, you know, maybe I'll steal a little bit of inspiration from Seattle or some other towns I've lived in, but nothing one-to-one, nothing where I'm, you know, trying to copy something from real life, because that's the beauty of this. We're trying to create a really nice city, not something that is directly inspired by any real place, just creative liberty. You know, I think about when I used to play games like SimCity, and I had that, you know, I wasn't really copying anything. I was just having fun with it, you know? Kind of just doing what I wanted to do and drawing another road and kind of going from there, you know? Like, it wasn't about trying to see if I could figure out a way to, you know, make a replica of some place in real life. And I've talked about this, but I do think that there's a certain degree of, you know, problems that we make for ourselves when we stop playing games just because we want to, you know, genuinely have a good experience, and we start playing them because we think, well, you know, I'm trying to, I don't know, like, it's weird, like, say, have a gaming career, you know? Like, that's a term we never would have said at all in the past, right? I said, well, you know, you want to have a successful gaming career. What? Gaming isn't a career. It's a hobby. It's something you do for fun. You know, but now, like, you know, we take it more seriously. I'm not saying it's all bad. It can be cool, but at some point, it's not just a hobby. It's something that you're doing because you feel like you're supposed to do it. So it's one of those things. It's kind of gotta learn how to enjoy life for the sake of it. I'm gonna put a couple of these windmills here, see if we can make some of our own power, because that would probably be a good idea. We're producing 9.6 megawatts. We're consuming 17, so we'll need a few more windmills. We're gonna be energy independent. Probably at least 2 more. Like we have some room here though. So there we go. Now we're producing 24 megawatts, consuming 17. So we are producing all of the power we need, but unfortunately we are disturbing these residents who are not happy about the noise pollution. Presumably noise pollution caused by that industry. I wonder if we can see. Where's it coming from? What's making all the noise? Yeah, the industrial area. Well, I guess what we can do is we'll do more commercial zoning here, and hopefully that'll help with the noise pollution. Looks like the factories were also polluting the air a little bit too, so I guess we can't have the factories so close to people's houses. A little better. So the real problem of air pollution, I think, is coming from the landfill. I think we're gonna probably want to move the landfill at some point. Now maybe we can make it a little bit better by eliminating some of that industry. But I think the landfill is going to be the problem. It's going to keep on adding pollution until we eventually take it away. Now we might be able to actually do something like you could do like a university or something there too, because I don't know that the university would be affected by the air pollution, but I don't know. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe we don't want our students to be experiencing smelling the garbage dump either. I think it's time for a small high school, though. I think a great place for that would be right here. Nice little modern school looking out over the water. No, I don't know if I can move the garbage dump. I think I can. See, like in the past, like you couldn't move some things, like a garbage dump, you couldn't move it because it was full of garbage, right? But it looks like the game will allow me to relocate the garbage dump. So, like that's actually pretty amazing. All I had to do was grab the trash dump, move it across the freeway. If only life was that simple, you know? You want to get rid of garbage, landfill, just, you know, click and drag it. But good to know. Good to know it's possible. Anyways, now that we did that, we're going to have less pollution problems by far. And we can expand our industry into the space where the garbage dump used to be. One thing I've learned when you're playing Skylines is you don't want to spam too many zones all at once, because people move in and like you don't want everyone moving in at the same time and getting old and dying at the same time and stuff like that. Like I think they did something to try to make the risk of death waves less of an issue, but still. Normally, it's just been a thing. If you want to avoid problems, don't expand your services. Don't expand your population too fast. But it is probably time for us to have a fire station. Because someone's house is burning down over here, so, you know. Probably be a good idea. We still don't have animations, though, for firefighters, which is a disappointment, because Skylines 1 has that. You can watch the firefighters grab their little fire hoses and fight the blaze. Maybe one day we'll get it. It will be interesting to see, though, like what happens, because I know Paradox has given the new developer, Ice Flake Studios, I believe, the responsibility of managing the Skylines franchise. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Like, is it going to be the next successful chapter in the City Skylines franchise, or is it going to be a disappointment, or worse? Will the game stop being expansively developed in the future? We don't know these things, but at least for the time being, the roadmap is that the new developer intends to keep developing the game, and Paradox, the parent company that owns the franchise, is committed to that as well. So having new DLCs coming out recently is probably a good thing. This wide pedestrian path I like. It's new. Didn't exist before. It's about the width of an alley, but it's just for pedestrians. We have more buildings available to us. So, there's a lot of parks we can choose from. Let's do a park cafe right here. I like that. You can go to the park, get yourself a cup of coffee, walk around. As we continue to grow outward, we're going to have to kind of shift the focus to see how we can maybe improve the lives of our citizens. It's one of the challenges of games like this. Like, you think to yourself, well, I'm going to, do something really cool. But then after a while, you can wind up in a situation where it's not really much to do other than kind of just expand outward. So there we have a tornado, There is that. Tornadoes come, tornadoes go. And, it's all right. Unfortunately, some bad things have happened to people's houses here, but, you win some, you lose some. They will rebuild So go ahead and delete the rubble, and it'll be just about as if it didn't ever happen. Except there. Looks like there was a car accident as a result of the tornado. Some people crashed. But that's alright. We move on. Moving on with our lives. But let's look at what options we have here, because we have some unplaced signature buildings. So what if we take the opportunity here to put a steakhouse there, because, you know, when a tornado comes and destroys a part of town, then you can build a new steakhouse, you know? Makes everything better. We have a little bit of space here. Maybe we can put some signature buildings there to make the waterfront a little more interesting. Espresso on the go? Looks like that's a little bit bigger. Maybe. Here we go. Maybe we can put the espresso shop here. I guess that espresso shop is one of the ones you have to drive through, so that needs to be facing a road for vehicles. I'm thinking might be time to expand once again. A couple more tiles so that we can start to think about what will eventually become our railroad depot neighborhood. And it'll also help us because we need more industrial zoning, so A little bit of a weird angle there. Let's try it again. There we go. We have almost 10,000 people. Very good positive cash flow. So I would imagine next time we can start working on expanding services and maybe adding some things like bike lanes and bus routes and trying to improve the overall feel of the city that we have made before we continue to expand further into new territory areas. But as it is, it looks like a much bigger city than it did when we started a little while ago. So I am pleased. I'm thinking that's a good place to leave it for this particular episode. Till next time, thanks so much for watching.